Alright, so let's continue with the last class. So, last class we talked about what is data, right? Why the data is so important for us to make the business decisions. And we say all data have context, right? Normally have the zeros as the cases, and for the columns, we call them are the characteristics about each case. We call them are variables, right? And then we say we have five W's, which are the important things for us when we have a data table. We need to know who we are collecting from, what we collect, what kind of information we collect for each case, right? So we say the who and what. These two W's can be shown from the data table, but the other three, when, where, why, and even how, should be included when we have a data table, because these four are also important when we have a data table. Although it may not be shown in the table, it should be included in another file to say when did you collect this information, where did you collect the information, why you collect information, and how did you collect this information, right? Okay. And we say that the data is not just numbers. It can be numbers, can be names, can be anything about the characteristics about this case, right? Okay. So we have a table like this. In the end, we talked about the actually uh, five fundamental elements of the statistics, right? So we want to know about the population, so we collect the sample from the population, and then the subjects in the sample, the units from the sample is called the subject, and then each characteristic about of a subject is called the variable, right? And then the process that we want to make the conclusion about the population, so we select the sample from the population, and then based on the samples we make the conclusion back to the population. All right, okay. In today's class we'll talk about the types, actually not two, the types of the variables. As we see from the last example, right? We have different kind of characteristics, right? Some of them are numbers. Even both of these two are numbers. Actually, these two kinds of numbers are different, right? This number are the detailed, actually the money you spent, which is the price, but this doesn't represent whether for the price it actually 9.99 is higher than 5.99, right? But for the error code, can you say 440 is higher than 312? Actually, no, it's just a code for a location, right? It doesn't mean that this location is better than this location, right? Okay, so for then these variables will be belongs to different types of variables. We will give name for each kind of variable. All right, okay, so let's talk about two major types of the variables. All right, so these two major types, first we'll talk about it is qualitative, or normally we call it is categorical variable. Another type is called the quantitative variable. One is qualitative variable, one is quantitative variable. Right, so first let's talk about categorical variable. Alright, so from the name of this kind of variable, it is called categorical variable. Right, so what is categorical variable? We say when the responses of a variable or of a variable, belong to categories for cases, it is called a qualitative variable or categorical variable. All right, so let's do some example. If our question is, do you invest in the stock market? Then the response can be yes or no, right? So you will have two categories. Then for each case, for each person, answer this question will have two categories for responses, either yes or no, right? Then for this kind of variable, we'll call it categorical variable. Another example, if the question is asking about what kind of advising do you use, I will provide three options for you to choose, either newspapers, internet, or direct mailings. Right, so your response will belong to either this category or this category or this category. Right, another example. What is your class at school? Right, you're either a freshman, sophomore, junior, senior, right? Your response will belongs to one of these categories. Got the idea? Right? Next example, I would recommend this course to another student, right? Then you will have either strongly disagree, slightly disagree, slightly agree, strongly agree. Right? You have four options to choose. Your response will belong to one of these four categories. The same thing for next example. How satisfied are you with this product? Can be very unsatisfied, unsatisfied, satisfied, very satisfied. Again, your response will belong to one of these four categories. All right, so then if the response of a variable belong to categories for cases, then it is called the categorical variable, or we call qualitative variable. All right, okay. For a categorical variable, there are two detailed um, kinds of variables, right? So we say if the categories of a categorical variable are just the names of the categories with no order, then it is also called nominal variable. So let's look at this definition. First, it says if the categories of a categorical variable, just the names of the categories with no order, then we also call it is a nominal variable. Alright, so let's think about these five examples. Right, so let's talk about the other one too. So if the categories of a categorical variable can be ordered, then it is also called ordinal variable. Alright, so let's summary about these two types of categorical variables. So first, this variable must be a categorical variable. This is the first thing you need to make sure. It is a categorical variable. Then you have two detailed types of categorical variables. Right? Okay, then you need to decide the categories can be ordered. then it will be nominal variable. If no order, then will be nominal variable. If can be ordered, then will be ordinal variable. All right, so let's talk about the first example. Do you invest in the stock market? First, you need to decide it is categorical variable or no. Your responses belongs to either one of these two categories, right? So it is categorical variable. Then you need to decide that these two categories can be ordered or cannot be ordered. Is yes better than no or no better than yes? No, right? So you don't order them. You don't say yes is better than no. Who knows whether it is yes or better or no, right? Then no, right? Okay, so for this case, yes or no, you cannot order these two responses. You cannot order these two categories. Then for this case, it will be what? Nominal, right? Okay, because the categories cannot be ordered, then it will be called nominal variable. All right, next, what kind of advertising do you use? Newspaper, internet, direct mailings. All right, okay, first, we have already decided that your response will belong to these three categories. Then it is categorical variable, right? Okay, next, you need to decide you can order these three categories or not. Of course, you cannot order them, right? So they are at the same level, right? So then for this variable, it is still nominal variable. Got the idea? All right, next, what is your class at school? Freshman, sophomore, junior, senior. Okay, first, we have already decided that your response will belong to these four categories, right? So it will be categorical variable. Then you need to decide that these categories can be ordered or cannot be ordered, or with no order. Sophomore is higher than freshman, right? Junior is higher than sophomore, right? Senior is higher than junior. So actually, these categories are ordered, right? So if they can be ordered, then we call it is ordinal variable. Got the idea? Alright, so let's practice next one. I would recommend this course to another student. Your response can be strongly disagree, slightly disagree, slightly agree, strongly agree. What about this one? You can order the categories, right? From strongly disagree and then higher, more and more recommend this course to another student, right? So it will be ordinal again. All right, and then next, how satisfied are you with this project? From very unsatisfied until very satisfied, right? So you can order these four categories. Again, it will be ordinal. All right. Got idea? Right, so first, it need to be categorical variables. The responses need to belong to one of the categories. Next, you need to decide that these categories can be ordered or with no order. If the categories with no order, then it will be called nominal variable. If the categories can be ordered, then it is called ordinal variable. Alright, okay. Next, we'll call it is quantitative variable. Right, so in contrast with qualitative variable, quantitative variable will be numerical values, will be numbers, but these numbers must be with units. Alright, and also this variable will tell us about the quantity of what is measured. Right, so first it must be numbers, but not only members, it must be with units. Tell us that what is the quantity of what is measured. Then it is called quantitative variable. Right, so let's make an example. So let's say height. The height of the students in our class. What about this variable? It is your responses, right? So your responses maybe 5, right? Let's just use another one, will be easier. Let's say 170 centimeters, right? Your response 160 centimeters, 183 centimeters, right? So for this variable, this characteristic about one student, this variable height have the responses with the units. It mirrors that what is the quantity of the height when you measure their heights. Right, so for this kind of variable will be called quantitative variable. Right, so for example, your exam 1 score, right? You will have 100 points, 90 points, 60 points mirrors what is the score of your exam 1, right? Okay, next, what about zip code? Think about it. What about zip code? For example, 45056 27, I don't know, 078, something like that. What about zip code? Is zip code a quantitative variable? The answer is no. First, it is numerical values, that's right. But does the zip code has any unit? No, there's no unit for zip code. Does the zip code mirror anything? Of course not. It just tell you what is the location, right? So what is the zip code variable? The zip code is categorical variable. Why? You have these zip codes, and once you have a person and then you record their zip code, think about it. Then the people will choose a zip code that they have the location belongs to this area, right? So 45056 is an area that a location belongs to. So zip code is a special case. You need to be very careful. It is not quantitative variable. It is categorical variable, or we call qualitative variable. All right. Okay, be careful. And we also have other data types, right? So first, it is called a identifier variable. So what is identifier variable? A identifier variable is a unique identifier assigned to each individual or item in the group. Alright, so let's look at the previous example. For this case, this variable, order number, is this variable a categorical variable? Categorical variable? Does these responses belong to some categories? No, right? Because what? Because each order has their own order numbers. It doesn't belong to any categories, right? So it is not categorical variable. Is it a quantitative variable? Does these numbers have any unit? Can measure anything? No, right? So they just not quantitative variable. So what is this variable? What is this order number variable? It is called identifier variable. It just identify that this order is different with this order. Every order has their unique number to identify that about this order. All right. Okay. So let's come back. So a identifier variable is a unique identifier assigned to each individual or item in the group. For example, social security numbers, right? Everyone has a different social security number. It doesn't belong to categorical variables. And social security number doesn't have units and doesn't measure anything, right? So social security numbers is just a unique identifier for each person. Student ID numbers, the same thing, right? Tracking numbers, it just assign different numbers for each package, right? So that you can track it. Last one, transaction numbers, right? Just like what we said about the order number, right? Okay. Okay, so for these kind of variables, it has no units, but it is useful in combining data from different sources. Right? Okay, and are not variables to be analyzed. Not variables to be analyzed. For example, what is analyzed? Let's say in this example, can you make analysis about the order number? Can you get some useful information from these order number? No, right? Because we just assign random number to each order. Can you get average about it? Can you do what is the range about these order number? It doesn't make sense. It doesn't make any sense, right? So you don't need to analyze about this variable. Right? Okay. So identifier variable doesn't have units and are not the variables to be analyzed. So in the next class, I will tell you how to exclude or hide this kind of variable when you analyze data in JUMP. All right. And another data type I want to talk about is called the cross-sectional and time series data. All right. Okay. So first, let's talk about time series data. What is time series data? From the name of this kind of data, it is about time. All right, so for this kind of variable, for the height, for this kind of variable, you measure the height from every student, right? But another kind of variable is still about the height, but it is not for every student. It is just for one student, but record or measure his height from his 2 years old, 3 years old, until 25 years old. So I just record the height regarding the time about one subject over time. Then this kind of variable is called time series data. Alright, so let's read about the definition again. Variables that are measured at regular intervals over time are called a time series. Typically, it is measured by months, quarters, or years. Right? So, for example, yearly income. Right? So every year income. For example, seasonal, let's say seasonal products, right? Amount of products, seasonal sales, monthly sales, right? So any variable that their responses are recorded over time, then it is called time series data. It is not about every cases. It is just about one case, but over time. All right. And sometimes when several variables are all measured at the same time point, the data is called cross-sectional data. So actually, we can call generally, of course, there will be special cases, but generally, if it is not time series data, then it is cross-sectional data because either it is over time or at the same time point. But there are different cases. For example, I measured the height of the students. For this student, I measure about in August. I measured this student in October. So they are not measured at the same time point. Then for this case, it's neither a cross-sectional nor the time series data. All right. But for this part, you just get the idea saying that if the variable is recorded over time, then it is a time series. If several variables are measured at the same time point, then it is called cross-sectional data. All right. Okay, so we will talk about this in the future in ISA 225. Right, so we will not talk about this kind of data in this course. All right, so let's look at an example. Okay, so this is a data table. All right, and then we have first we need to read the table, right? So first, what are these rows? Think about it. these rows are 6 cases, right? And then for each case, we have 8 variables, right? And then what? And then for each variable, we need to identify or think about for each variable what is the type of this variable. It is very, very important before you analyze the data. You need to know what does that mean, right? Okay, so first, let's talk about each. Account ID. Is it a categorical variable? Of course not, right? Account ID is just a number assigned to every account, right? So it doesn't mean anything, and it is not a category. It doesn't have many categories to be belongs to, right? Okay. So account ID is not a categorical variable. Is the account ID quantitative variable? It is numerical values, but it doesn't have units, right? And account ID is not very useful for our analysis. They are just the numbers assigned to each account. You even don't need to average them, even don't make sense, right? So what is account ID? It will be identifier. It's a unique identifier for each account. Got idea? Alright, next, pre-spending. So for this variable, the responses are numerical values with units, right? And then this is the measurements about the price for pre-spending. So it is quantitative. Alright, okay, next, spending. It's the same thing for the pre-spending, right? It is numerical values with units and mirrors the amount of spending, right? Okay, next. So post-spending will be again quantitative variable, right? Okay, next, age. All right. So this variable is interesting. Think about it. I give you 10 seconds to think about it. Age. If I do not have this information, if I do not have these responses, if I do not have these responses, if I just randomly ask you what is your age, you may tell me you are 22, you are 20, you are 18, you are 14, something like that, right? So if your responses are something like this, then this variable will be quantitative, right? Okay, but look at these responses. Look at the responses for these ones. What's the difference with the one I described? It is not detailed ages, right? They are ranges of the ages, right? And then if you have an age, for example, is 21, then it belongs to this category. if you are in age of 41, it will be belongs to this category, right? So it is not a detailed age. It is, they are categories. Your response is either belongs to this category or this category or this category or this category or this category, right? So for this case, the age is not quantitative variable. So this is a very, very good example. Age for in this case, right? Be careful. I say the age variable in this data table is not quantitative variable. It is categorical variable. Got the idea? Right? Because your responses are categories or not, they are not detailed numerical values for each case. So age is categorical variable. And then we have a further step. If this variable is a categorical variable, then what? Then we need to decide it is ordinal variable or nominal variable. We say if the categories can be ordered, then it will be ordinal variable. If the categories cannot be ordered, no order, then it will be called nominal variable, right? Okay. So can these categories be ordered or not? Of course, can be ordered, right? So this age group will be younger than this age group, will be younger than this age group, right? So these categories can be ordered, then this categorical variable can be also called ordinal variable. All right, okay, so this is a very good example. Think about it. All right, so next, segment. Think about this variable. First, it is not numerical values, right? The responses are not numerical values, so what, of course, it is not quantitative variable, right? Next, are these responses categories? Belongs to any categories? Of course, right? Either retail or travel or services or leisure, right? So actually, kind of they have four categories in this data table, right? So segment is again categorical variable. And further, we need to decide it is ordinal or nominal. Can these categories be ordered? Is there anything other related to these categories? Of course not, right? So it will be nominal variable. Got the idea? Right, next, enroll or not. So the response will be yes or no, right? So we say yes or no. These two are the two categories for this variable. Okay, so of course it will be categorical variable again, right? And then since yes or no cannot be ordered, it will be nominal variable. Okay, next, offer. Is there any offer? Can be 9, can be gift card, gave you the gift card, can be double miles, right? Okay, so it would be what kind of offer is offered, right? Okay, so it will be what? Totally three categories. Either belongs to no offer, or belongs to give you a gift card, or provides you the double miles, right? So it will be categorical variable again, right? Can these three categories be ordered? Think about it. Can be ordered? Is give you gift card is better than provide you double miles? No, I don't think so, right? Okay, so it will be nominal, no others. The last variable, segment spent, right? So again, will be numerical values with units mirrors amount of spent, right? So will be quantitative. Okay, got the idea? All right. Okay, so now we have went through this example for these variables. All right, and hopefully you have a better idea about the types of the variables. All right, and then there are several things you need to be careful when you identify the variable to be categorical variable or quantitative variable. Right, so now let's talk about what can be wrong when you think about the types of the variables. First, do not label a variable as categorical or quantitative without thinking about the data and what they represent. The same variable can sometimes take on different roles. All right. Okay. So what does that mean? Still remember this variable, age variable, right? If you do not have the data, if you do not have these responses, can you decide it is categorical variable or quantitative variable? No, right? So do not label a variable as categorical or quantitative without thinking about the detailed data. All right? Okay. So this is the first thing you can be wrong. Be careful about it. All right. Next, do not assume that a variable is quantitative just because its value are numbers. Recall some examples we talked about. What is the example we talked about for this case? Do not assume a variable is quantitative just because its value are numbers. What is the example? Zip code. Something like student ID number, social security number. Still remember? Right? So zip code is not quantitative variable. It is categorical variable. Student ID number and social security number, these two are identifier variable, right? So both of these two types are shown as numbers, but these two are not quantitative variable. All right, be careful. All right, okay. So here I say categories are often given numerical labels. Do not let that fool you into thinking that they have quantitative meaning. Right? Please look at the context. Right? So you need to look at the numbers to check whether they have units, whether they are measurements of some the variables. All right. So here I make up a simple example. Right, so I just make a table in the company to give you the information about the 4 meetings in this month. right? And the room assigned to this meeting. Okay, think about these two variables. What is the variable type for this variable, meetings? Think about it. Is this variable categorical variable, quantitative variable, identifier variable, or time series variable? I don't think it is time series variable. It is not recorded by time over time, right? So just choose whether it is categorical variable, quantitative variable, or identifier variable. Think about it. Is these responses are categories? If I have another meeting, does that meeting belongs to either of them? No, right? So this 1, 2, 3, 4 are not categories. These 1, 2, 3, 4 are the numbers assigned to each meeting. Just to give a name for each meeting, right? So these numbers are not numerical values with units that mirror something. So what is this meeting variable? This meeting variable is identifier. Got the idea? Right, so this example I made up is a little bit difficult for you to understand, but make sure you understand it. If you do have some questions, just make sure you go to WebEx. I will be there waiting for your questions. All right, be sure to make it clear. Let's talk about next one. Zoom. What about this variable? Is this variable categorical, quantitative, identifier? Think about the relationship. Is it let's talk about the easiest one to be deleted. Is this a quantitative variable? Although these four are numbers, numerical values, but what? They do not have units. They doesn't mirror anything, right? Okay, so it is not quantitative variables. Then is this variable a categorical variable or identifier variable? Think about what is this data for. This data is for the information the room assigned to each meeting, right? That means for this meeting, this room is assigned to this meeting, right? Okay, that means if I have another meeting, the fifth meeting, it may be in the same room. Is that right? So actually this room variable is kind of like the zip code. Similar with the variable of zip code. It just to give you the location of this meeting. If you have another meeting, it can be belongs to this room. So each room is a category. Got the idea? Alright, okay, so room is not a identifier variable. It doesn't identify anything, any subject. It just gave you the location of each meeting. So it is categorical variable. Right, so take your time to think about that. And the last thing you need to be oh yes. So since room is categorical variable, is this a ordinal variable or a nominal variable? can these rooms be ordered? Is 204 is better than 101? Is 315 is better than 104? Of course not. They are just locations, right? They are in the same um, level of measurement, right? So something like that. So it's just like zip codes, right? 45056 is not better than 45057, right? Okay. So it will be nominal, not ordinal. All right. Okay. So the last thing you need to be careful is you need to be always be skeptical. All right. So what does that mean? First, one reason to analyze data is to discover the truth. We want to discover what is the true yearly income of United States citizens, right? Okay, so even when you are told a tax for the data, it may turn out that the truth is a bit different or even a lot different. So what you need to do, you need to decide by yourself. You cannot depend on what other people tell you. All right. Next, the text colors our interpretations of the data. So those who want to influence what you think may slant the context. Right. So you need to be careful about it. Right. Don't be fooled. Right, next, a survey that seems to be about all students may in fact report just the opinions of those who visit a fan website. So, what does that mean? You need to make the survey representative of the whole population. You cannot just make the survey about the group who are interested about this survey. Right? So something like um, if a survey is about blood pressure, right? If I am in the normal uh, blood pressure, I don't have any problem about my blood pressure. I may not interested in joining this kind of survey, right? I will not be concerned about it, right? So when you make the survey, you need to be careful that you are sending out the survey to everyone, and then you get the responses from every aspect of the responses. All right, and the last thing, the question that the respondents answered may be posted in a way that influences responses. All right, so what does that mean? It is clear, right? So that means the respondents answered may be posted in a way that influence the responses, right? So your responses will be, or let's say can be influences based on different situations. And I didn't include another thing is even though you make everything clear for these steps, your collected information may be biased because what? Because sometimes your respondents don't give you the true responses because your question is so sensitive. For example, if I ask you, um, let's say, I just ask you that how many, I really don't want to ask that kind of question. Um, um, how many girlfriends are you having right now? All right. So of course you would tell me either one or zero, right? So um, For this kind of questions, if you are making it too sensitive, the respondents will not give you the truth. Then your data it will not give you the right conclusion, right? So this is an example of the sensitive questions. So don't make or don't ask this kind of sensitive questions when you make the survey. All right. Okay, so that's all for today's class, and that's all for chapter one. And the next class, I will just use JUMP to tell you some starting steps when you make the analysis. If you have a data table in Excel, right? How you can import it to JUMP, how you can identify them as different variable types, and how you can make a simple report, something like that. But we'll talk about simple report in the next chapter, but I want to give you a general idea about what is JUMP. All right. Okay, so see you in the next class.